Funding for this video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you.
With over 1,000 monsters to choose from in D&D, it can be hard to know which ones to use, and even harder to know how to play them. What weapons do they favor? What tactics would they use? How do they interact with other types of monsters? These are all questions that can come up to DMs that are looking to make their combats more enticing for their players. It's certainly one that I struggled with. That's why I'm back today with another monster breakdown for D&D. Hello again everyone, I'm Bill from Altroll, and today I'm going to dive into a brief history of a D&D creature, how that history was adapted into 5th edition, and how this lore can help game masters make their combat encounters better. So, whether you're here for the cool lore breakdown or for the combat tactics, I'm hoping to give you a lot more to chew on when it comes to the monsters we face in D&D. For episode 18, let's burrow into the details of a monstrous predator of the plains, the Ankheg. First appearing in 1977's release of Dragon No. 5, and later reprinted in the 1st edition Monster Manual that same year, the Ankheg was described as an ant centipede creature that burrowed under the earth, gathering nutrients that were supplemented with the occasional humanoid. Its original design was centipede-like in appearance, with a dark brown exoskeleton, pink undersides, and large black eyes. Its main strategy was to hide slightly beneath the soil, springing out of the ground upon sensing movement. Its mandibles were powerful and could crush a human to death, but it relied on its saliva to dissolve and consume its prey. Further details were added to the Ankheg's lore and ecology, with Mark File's Ecology of the Ankheg article in Dragon No. 117. In it, File explains that Ankhegs reproduce like praying mantises, where a female Ankheg will release an odor to attract and subdue a potential mate. The female has the male fertilize the eggs, then rips the male's head off so that his corpse can house the future Ankhegs. Other than their lethal mating process, File also describes how the best way to kill an Ankheg is to hunt them during molting season, typically right before they go into hibernation. When shedding their shell, Ankhegs secrete a horrible smell that normally is meant to drive away natural predators. In the weeks following this process, though, they can be easily killed, making it the best time for adventurers to hunt them. Subsequent editions of D&D continued to feature the Ankheg as a tough, early to mid-game monstrosity for parties to face, with minor changes that kept them fresh. 2nd edition added a fun fact that the Ankheg's tunnels and dung would fertilize the soil behind them, making them both the bane of farmers, but also beneficial to them. 3rd edition reinforced that Ankhegs work solo, and while an area might have multiple Ankhegs infesting it, they will not work together, instead focusing on different targets and emphasizing their own life and needs. This was retconned slightly in 4th edition, where the whole praying mantis mating ritual was scrapped. Instead, mated pairs of Ankhegs would travel with their hatched broodlings, feeding them with monsters, animals, or unaware farmers. Their broodlings were also added as a stat block, but those were scrapped when they transitioned over to 5th edition. In 5th edition, the Ankheg is described as an enormous, many-legged insect, its long antenna twitching in response to any movement around it. Its legs end in sharp hooks adapted for burrowing and grasping its prey, and its powerful mandibles can snap a small tree in half. Moving away from the prior editions of ants or worm-like creatures, the 5th edition Ankheg adopts a look of a giant brown praying mantis monstrosity. Ankhegs still burrow under the earth, using their mandibles to dig narrow, partially collapsed tunnels beneath the grasslands and forests that they hunt in. While they do receive a portion of their nutrients from the soil, Ankhegs do need to supplement their diet with fresh meat. When its antennae detect movement, It bursts forward from the earth, crushing and grinding its prey with its mandibles while it secretes acidic digestive enzymes. These enzymes help dissolve the Ankheg's victim, but can also be squirted a short distance away to take down fleeing foes. Once its meal is done, the Ankheg returns to its burrows, leaving behind molted chitin, eggs, or the remains of their victims that weren't devoured. Now that we've examined their lore, let's pivot over to the Ankheg's stat block to take a look at how they work mechanically. Starting at the top, we have their size, creature type, and alignment. Size in 5th edition defines the space a creature takes up in combat, with a large creature taking up a 10-foot by 10-foot square or hex on a battle map. Using the 3.5 edition Dungeon Master's Guide, shown here, Ankhegs can be between 8 and 16 feet tall and weigh between 500 pounds and 2 tons. Their creature type is monstrosity. Monstrosities are monsters in the strictest sense of the word, and serve as a catch-all category for creatures that don't really fit into any other category. Alignment broadly describes a creature's general outlook on the world, and combines their moral beliefs with their attitudes toward society and order. The alignment of the Ankheg is unaligned, meaning they lack the capacity for rational thought and thus do not have an alignment. Such a creature is going to be incapable of making a moral or ethical choice, and acts according to its bestial nature. Below that top bar are the rest of the Ankheg stats, which are essential for the Dungeon Master to play them in combat. The Ankheg has an armor class of 14 while standing, or 11 while prone, 6d10 plus 6 hit points, or 39 on average, a movement speed of 30 feet, and a burrow speed of 10 feet. Looking at their ability scores, the Ankheg has 17 strength, 11 dexterity, 13 constitution, 1 intelligence, 13 wisdom, and 6 charisma. With 10 being average for an ability score, the Ankheg has high strength, constitution, and wisdom, average dexterity, and low intelligence and charisma. For their skills and proficiencies, the Ankheg has dark vision out to 60 feet, tremor sense out to 60 feet, a passive perception of 11, a proficiency bonus of +2, a challenge rating of 2, and awards 450 experience points when killed. For offensive actions, the Ankheg has a bite attack and a recharging acid spray attack. The bite attack has a +5 to hit, a reach of 5 feet, and deals 2d6 plus 3 slashing damage plus 1d6 acid damage on a hit. If the target is a large or smaller creature, it is grappled with an escape DC of 13. Until this grapple ends, the Ankheg can bite only the grappled creature, but it has advantage on attack rolls to do so. The acid spray attack spits acid in a 30-foot long, 5-foot wide line, providing the Ankheg is not grappling a creature. Each creature in that line must make a DC 13 dexterity saving throw, taking 3d6 acid damage on a failed save, or taking half as much on a successful save. This ability recharges on a 6, meaning that the Ankheg can use this ability once, then at the start of subsequent turns must roll a 6 on a d6 to be able to use this ability again. Lastly, we have their environment tags. When using digital resources, we can see that Ankhegs are largely found in forest and grassland areas. Now that we've gone through and sorted out their stat block, let's relate the Ankheg's lore and abilities to how we should be using them in combat encounters. Specifically, we're going to look at how they should behave, how they would approach a combat situation, and how to think like an Ankheg if you want to fight effectively as one. How do we do this? Well, we're going to take the lore and stat block of the monster and compare that with how that information is intended, referencing tactics and interpretations from The Monsters Know What They're Doing by Keith Amon. Let's start by going through Amon's key assumptions one by one and relating them to the Ankheg as we go. The first of Amon's assumptions is that most creatures want to survive, and if seriously wounded, will try to flee combat. Exceptions to this rule are fanatics or intelligent beings who believe they'll be hunted down and killed if they do flee. Now, seriously wounded can be subjective, but we can assume the threshold of that to roughly be 1/3 of the creature's health. With an average of 39 hit points, 1/3 of that would be 13. So, if an Ankheg were reduced to 13 hit points or fewer, it may begin to flee combat, taking any defeated prey with it as it burrows back underground. Next up, let's look at how their alignment can impact their thinking. On the scale of good to evil, good creatures tend to be friendly to others, whereas evil creatures are hostile to others. On the scale of lawful to chaotic, lawful monsters may try to capture or non-lethally subdue others, whereas chaotic monsters would just kill them. Since Ankhegs are unaligned, we really can't discern a lot of their mindset just from their alignment. They are beasts in the truest sense, and are going to act according to that nature. Continuing with their mindset, let's dive into some of their mental ability scores. Ankhegs have an intelligence score of 1. With regards to intelligence scores of 7 or less, Amon states, a creature with intelligence of 7 or less operates purely from instinct. That doesn't mean that it uses its features ineffectively, only that it has one preferred modus operandi and isn't going to be able to adjust if it stops working. Likely due to their bestial nature, Ankhegs operate off of instinct in combat. They'll use their tremor sense while burrowed to ambush potential prey, but beyond that, they're just going to attack blindly until they, or their prey, are subdued. On top of that, Ankhegs also have a wisdom score of 13. With regards to wisdom scores of 12 or 13, Amon states, a creature with wisdom of 12 or higher will choose targets carefully, and may even refrain from combat in favor of parley if it recognizes that it's outmatched. As ambush predators, Ankhegs have enough sense to know when to strike and when not to, but their lack of language means parleying with them is nearly impossible. Instead, Ankhegs may choose to run from a fight that gets a little too tough for them, or not engage at all if their tremor sense picks up a big group traveling above them. Now that we've set up how they think, let's take a look at the Ankheg's physical abilities that influence how they fight. Thinking like Amon, we can assume the following. Creatures with high strength focus on melee combat, and won't need to compensate with greater numbers. As such, they don't need to outnumber an enemy to be willing to take a fight. Creatures with average dexterity will prefer to attack with ranged weapons, and if it's intelligent, the creature may lay traps as well. Creatures with high constitution typically have a hit point advantage over their enemies, and because of that, they're less likely to hide in combat since they can soak up a couple attacks before going down. A creature with a feature that gives it advantage, or gives its enemy disadvantage, will always prefer to use that feature. To recap our earlier stat block examination, Ankhegs have high strength, average dexterity, and high constitution. Comparing that examination to the assumptions we put forward, we can deduce that Ankhegs are melee-focused ambush predators that use their burrowing nature to rise from the ground and surprise their prey. They'll use their acid spray to hit enemies at a distance, and then, while that is recharging, they'll close the distance to bite and grapple their wounded foes, focusing down grappled enemies first in order to bite with advantage. The last major premise from Amon is that in D&D 5th edition, unless otherwise specified, any creature gets their full movement, one action, one bonus action, and one reaction, just like any player character does. Amon posits that any creature that exists within the game world will have evolved in accordance with this rule, and it will seek to obtain the best possible result from the action economy of the game. This means they'll combine whatever movement, actions, bonus actions, and reactions are available to them for the best possible outcome. When it comes to their action economy, the Ankheg doesn't have a ton going for it in terms of bonus actions, but it can still try to maximize its effectiveness with surprise rounds. Given that it's an ambush creature, Ankhegs would always want to start combat with a surprise round, though that's largely up to the perceptiveness of the adventuring party. As stated before, the acid attack can be used once before needing to recharge, and it cannot be used while grappling a foe with its bite attack. Therefore, its first turn would want to use the acid spray attack so that it can recharge as soon as possible. After the first turn is completed, the Ankheg would use its movement speed to get into melee and use its bite attack, which also grapples any creature large or smaller. Once grappled, future bite attacks would be rolled with advantage, so the Ankheg would keep biting a grappled target until it's dead. Once the first target is down, the Ankheg would move on to the next target and repeat this cycle. But if it gets low on health, it may use its burrow speed to try and escape the encounter. So, with all of these assumptions laid out and applied to Ankhegs, what do we now know about how to use them in combat? First, Ankhegs are ambush predators, burrowing underneath the soil to rise up and surprise their prey. They'll use their tremor sense to wait for a target they believe they can handle, then claw their way up, ready to consume anything unlucky enough to be there. Second, despite these ambush tactics, Ankhegs will know when a threat is too large, choosing only the moment they believe is best to strike. While unable to communicate through normal means, they will run away from fights that they begin losing, or that are tougher than they first thought. Third, in combat, Ankhegs will attempt an ambush, then open with their acid spray ability before closing into melee. Once in melee, they'll use their bite attack to grapple one target, then bite that target on future turns with advantage. Once that first target is down, it repeats this process with the next target, using its acid spray again if that happens to recharge. Fourth, if reduced to 13 hit points or fewer, an Ankheg will attempt to flee combat. While their movement speed of 30 feet should be enough to dash away from most conflicts, they can also use their burrow speed to attempt an escape, though foolish adventurers can attempt to chase after them through their tunnels. Fifth, if an Ankheg wins a combat encounter, it's likely to just devour its prey as any other beast would. Their acidic digestion system means that adventuring parties who lose a member to the Ankheg will find little to no remains left to revivify. But with that, we come to the end of today's video on the Ankheg. Monstrous insects that plague the forests and grasslands, the Ankheg is a historic D&D monster that, unfortunately, shows its age with how little it brings to the game. Lacking unique features, and being described as loners that don't work in groups, the Ankheg can present a challenge for DMs to turn them into something more than just a big monster to fight in a field. While they make for a great early game pest to clear out for a local farmer, the lack of group tactics means that veteran adventurers really won't find them to be any trouble at all. However, what I want to know is, what do you think of the Ankheg? Do you like burrowing these insects below your party to ambush them? Or do you think they're a bit plain considering how long they've been around? You can let me know down in the comments, or you can discuss it on the Alt-Roll Discord using the link in the description. While on the server, you can view our courses that teach the basics of D&D. If you like what we do, supporting us on our Ko-fi goes a long way in helping us keep the server going, and make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to be notified when our videos go live. However, that's all I had for you. Thank you all for watching, make sure to have a great rest of your day, and I'll see all of you next time.